On this week's 51%, we hit the track. We learn how one roller derby league in New York is rebuilding after the coronavirus pandemic. We take a look at the gender pay gap and the overall state of women in sports. And we hear from the founder of the country's first sports bar dedicated solely to women's sports.
I mean, if every sports bar in America changed one TV to a women's sports game every day, that would be a win for me.
I'm Jesse King. It's all up next on 51%.
I was standing around like one of those girls I had seen in a movie. The whole world was a movie back then. I had my sunglasses on, I wanted to be seen without seeing shy Lolita. I wasn't really in it, I didn't really get it.
You're listening to 51%, a WAMC production dedicated to women's issues and experiences. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jesse King. The Equal Pay Act turned 60 years old this month. Signed by President John F. Kennedy on June 10, 1963, the law amended the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 to add protections against wage discrimination based on sex. Of course, as you're probably aware, and as we've discussed on this show recently actually, there is still a sizable wage gap between men and women in the United States. The Department of Labor says it's currently around an average of 83.7%, so for every dollar men make, women in the same position make an average of 83 to 84 cents. There's a lot of reasons why this is still the case, and we'll revisit them in a few. But to mark the anniversary of the Equal Pay Act, as well as the 51st anniversary of Title IX, the Labor Department recently held an online roundtable exploring what it's like for women in one particular field, sports. It's important to remember that there's a whole industry behind the players in sports we love, from coaches and referees to broadcasters, agents, stadium reps, so on and so forth. And a lot of these jobs have traditionally been held by men, but more and more women are getting in the game. Lauren Holtkamp-Sterling is a referee for the National Basketball Association, where she has officiated more than 300 regular season games across 8 seasons. She told her fellow panelists that her decision to shoot for the NBA came as a surprise to some of her friends and family at the time.
One of my male colleagues asked, and I was also working in the WNBA at the time and working women's college basketball. And he said, why do you want to work in the NBA? Why do you want to work in the NBA? And this is one of my friends, and he meant it. It was coming from a caring place, I believe, but he was asking me a question that nobody would ever ask him. Why, if you have these other job opportunities, why would you want to work in one of the best professional leagues in the world? And I looked at him, I said, for all the same reasons that you do. I want the same thing. I want the challenge. The training is exceptional. And there is an additional piece that I think for women that we bring to the table was an opportunity to advance a social justice need.
When Holtkamp-Sterling finished her training and officially joined the NBA, she was the league's first female referee in 20 years. Wendy Chun-Hoon, director of the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor, says a big reason there's still a gender pay gap today is what she calls occupational segregation. In other words, women are shut out of high-paying opportunities and steered toward fields that pay less, like the service and care sectors. Meanwhile, men dominate higher-paying positions in STEM fields, business, and yes, even sports. But funny enough, department research also shows that as women enter male-dominated fields, the average salary for those jobs often goes down, suggesting that on a certain level, women's labor is simply devalued. Chun-Hoon says a lot of the pay gap can be attributed to general discrimination and bias, but that's hard to fully capture in a statistical model of research. While Holtkamp-Sterling didn't go into specifics about her job or salary, she says she was no stranger to discrimination, especially early in her career. And just as it's hard to measure it on a broad scale, she says it can be hard to name it in the moment, too.
You feel it. It maybe knocks you off balance. And I'll just speak for myself here. I experience it as sort of an ungrounding in myself or an ungrounding even in my work. Always pressing into the mastery of the work has given me a solid footing to continue to move forward. And now I find I'm in this place, I'm kind of moving into this place professionally where I'm thinking systemically, what does it mean to provide these resources and care for women moving through this experience? And I will say positively, the NBA has been a leader. You see women coaches on the sideline, women in the front office now. In the referee training ranks, you've got a high representation of women coming into the training ranks. So I'm in this place professionally now where I'm thinking about what does it mean systemically to like address some of these big questions for women and what we need to continue to have access to the training, move into these places and excel.
The resulting inequity, however, can be obvious. Brooke Wyckoff, now head coach of the women's basketball team at Florida State University, spent 8 years in the WNBA from 2001 to 2009, playing for the Orlando Miracle, Connecticut Sun, and Chicago Sky. Wyckoff says she never expected to be paid on the same level as her male peers, per se. The WNBA was still somewhat new and lacked the viewership of the NBA, but she was floored by the sheer lack of facilities, transportation, and accommodations offered to her and her teammates. Wyckoff says the WNBA has come a long way since then. It's much more financially stable, but she knows a lot of players still travel commercially, face harassment on the road, and play overseas to make ends meet. She says the number of WNBA teams has actually shrunk since her time on the court. Now as a coach, her students have fewer opportunities to go professional.
Title IX is amazing. I love that it covers so much for us at the college level. It really does provide such a great atmosphere for women to grow as people, as students, as athletes. And then when they come out in the real world, it can be such a downer. And that's where I want to see the continued progression there.
Title IX, passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibits sex discrimination in schools and educational programs that receive federal funding. Department of Education Deputy Assistant Secretary for Strategic Operations and Outreach, Suzanne Goldberg, credits it with the boom of girls' sports. In 1972, she says just 300,000 girls competed in high school athletics, with many schools failing to offer some programs at all. Now, she says roughly 3.4 million girls compete in high schools nationwide. But that's not to say that we don't have a long way to go. Goldberg says female athletes are less likely to score college scholarships, despite women now making up most of the college population. And the Education Department still sees cases where schools are violating Title IX, and girls' teams are playing with secondhand equipment and subpar facilities compared to their male peers.
OCR, the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, has 3 resources. These are resources designed to help students, parents, coaches, athletic directors, school officials, general public, evaluate whether a school is meeting its legal duty, its legal responsibility to provide equal athletic opportunity regardless of sex. So there's an overview. It's kind of a one-pager, 2-sided resource that provides examples of the kinds of situations that could, depending on the facts and circumstances, violate Title IX. Those are some of the examples I just gave you. And then there are 2 specialized resources, one for K-12 schools and the other for colleges and universities. If you have concerns, if you see discrimination, you can file a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Education.
So for anyone hoping to get into the game, what should they know? Well, first off, you don't have to be a skilled athlete to play a part in the sports you love. Kim Davis became the Senior Executive Vice President of the National Hockey League after a long career in finance and banking. She encourages women in any field, but particularly sports, to find mentors and embrace their leadership style, even if it doesn't match the more aggressive style often exhibited by men.
Sometimes you feel like an imposter, this feeling that you really aren't that talented and that you fooled everyone who thinks that you are. And if you feel that way, join the club. I think there are 2 things to remember. First of all, that you can have those thoughts and still perform well and still be incredible. And secondly, again, understand that men suffer from the imposter syndrome. So all of this to say that we all have the opportunity to tap into our unique power. Being a leader takes courage, it takes bravery, but we have a responsibility and a call to be the examples for the future that, in my opinion, is very bright for women.
In other words, don't be afraid to break the mold. You can learn more about the gender pay gap and the causes behind it at the U.S. Department of Labor's website, dol.gov. Now that most restrictions around the COVID-19 pandemic have ended, many are flocking back to the hobbies and sporting events they love. Amateur athletic leagues are particularly looking to bolster their rosters, train up new recruits, and fill the stands. In New York, the Capital District's original roller derby league, the Albany All-Stars, are working hard to get their organization back on track. Our associate producer, Jody Cowan, stopped by one of their bouts and practices to learn more about the sport and what draws women to it.
With helmets locked, mouthguards cheeked, and knee and elbow pads strapped firmly in place, about 30 women skate in unison around an oval practice track taped to the floor of the Blessed Sacrament School Gymnasium in Albany, New York. The skaters follow shouted instructions punctuated by high-pitched whistle blows that signify their next move, quickly shifting weight from their right foot to their left before bending down to a kneeling position, all while maintaining forward motion on quad skates. At the center of the oval, giving both instructions and encouragement, is Alexis De La Torre, a.k.a. Mary Payne. A league veteran from the Hudson Valley, Mary Payne wears many hats, serving as the coach during practices and as defensive blocker during matches or bouts. She credits a 2006 documentary on the Austin, Texas roller derby scene with sparking her interest in the sport.
I watched that, and it was completely definitive. This has to be in my life. Clicking around trying to find some local leagues, nothing was happening in Albany. I ran into somebody after, getting drinks after work one day, and she goes, "Ugh, I keep getting all these MySpace requests to join roller derby." I almost pushed her off her bar stool. What? I need this in my life. What is happening here? And I hounded the hell out of her trying to get her to send it over to me. So what really sold me on it was, I was like, yes, I get to be part of this gang. I get to kick ass. I get to do all these fantastic things where I can really stretch and push my body to different limits. I get to entertain. I get to learn a whole bunch. And it's just this really encouraging way to be these little mini rock stars.
Once widely popular across the United States, roller derby has evolved from its relay race origins in the 1940s to become a full-contact, high-energy, competitive sport that embraces the theatrics of pro wrestling, including the use of player pseudonym, and the punk sensibilities of 90s skate culture. Where the focus was once exclusively on spectator entertainment, going as far as to have scripted rivalries and bout winners decided before the opening whistle, today the physical contact is indeed real and the competitive spirit fierce. Since its revival in the early 2000s, women have increasingly emerged as the prominent players, supporters, and organizers of the sport, though all are welcome to participate. In Albany, the All-Stars Roller Derby League is a skater-owned and run business recognized by the Women's Flat Track Derby Association. The WFTDA currently recognizes 427 member leagues across 6 continents. Mary Payne breaks down how the sport's play action takes shape.
You have 5 players on each team. On each team is 4 blockers and 1 jammer. The jammers are point scorers. The blockers are one of the few sports where we are playing offense and defense at the same time. When the whistle blows, the jammers start in the back of what's called the pack. Whistle blows, they take off. The initial pass for the jammers trying to get past the blockers is who determines who's going to have lead jammer. That person is going to have control over the next 2 minutes. From there on out, any scoring passes of where a jammer passes a blocker's hips of an opposing player is where they start getting points. And then the lead jammer, depending on who's in the front, who has the most slaps, has control over when to call that jam. And they could potentially keep racking up points over and over and over, or vice versa. Okay, the other person's scoring, we're having a hard time getting through. Go ahead, hands on the hips, call it off. We got to control that.
In a pre-pandemic season, the Albany League featured a full lineup of over 50 skaters that would be divided by skill level to form 2 competing teams, the WFTDA-chartered All-Stars and competing Brawl Stars, for exhibition matches. Now, however, Mary Payne says the league is in a rebuilding year.
So much has changed. A lot of seasoned skaters aren't going to come back. We were lucky enough to have a couple vets return. So we are now, promoting again, recruiting again, trying to get more people back in. We're really, really fortunate. We've got a solid amount of new people coming back in with a sprinkle of some vets to really kind of show them, the path laid out.
So what makes a good player? Mary Payne says a big draw to the sport is its inclusivity. Regardless of age, athleticism, or skill level, she says everyone brings something unique to the table.
This is roller derby. It's not basketball. It's not soccer. These aren't things that we did in gym class in school. So when people are coming in, on occasion we'll have people who are like, oh, I've been a speed skater, or I've been, ice skating for, all of my childhood, and that's rare. It's not the given. So most people come in, some will have some sports backgrounds. Soccer players traditionally have had really great footwork. We can really work with them on agility really fast. But there's people that are like, hey, I've never played a sport And yet I'm really attracted to this. And that is fantastic.
As practice breaks, skaters split off into groups for more focused instruction. Speaking with the players, they all seem to have different roles, interests, and reasons for joining the group. New York City native Heather Smith, or Inclement Heather as she's known on the track, is a former figure skater who's been with the team for just over a year. Now a blocker, she's got her eye on a jammer position.
It's so inclusive, and everybody just feels like we get each other, and there's that aspect of like, we're here to work hard, but we're also here to like support each other and bring each other up. It's just so awesome. And if you never thought that you could do a contact sport, nothing is like just trying it because I never would have thought that I could do a full contact sport. I never grew up playing hockey, never rugby, like I literally figure skated. And now sitting here and just being able to take and give hits on people, being able to push people over is just the most empowering thing ever.
Skater Heather Topolsky, also known as Recordian, who commutes to practices and bouts from her home in Massachusetts, has been competing since 2011 and is currently an officiator with the league.
Anybody who's looking for any sort of activity to belong to a community, that is really awesome. We have one new skater who's just like, I just want to be part of a community. I don't want to skate. And she's helping out officiate, and she's fantastic. If you just need something to do on a Saturday night, you can be involved in roller derby just by going to watch a game. If you want to skate, cool. There's no pressure, at least with Albany, to move at a certain pace. You can take whatever time you need to. So if it's something you're looking for just to exercise and get your health up, whatever you're doing, come on down. It's all good.
The Albany All-Stars typically play against 3 to 5 competing leagues across the Northeast, although bouts are far between at the moment as the league continues to regroup and develop resources to support future matches. Mary Payne encourages those looking to get involved to learn more about the league at albanyallstars.com. A common challenge faced by women's sports teams, even today, is viewership. And when athletes speak out about the lesser pay and other inequities faced by women's sports teams, for example, the subpar facilities given to women during the NCAA Women's College Basketball Tournament in 2021, they sometimes have that viewership thrown back at them. If women's teams brought in more views, brought in more money, they'd get better pay. But when you think about it, how often do you see your local sports bar or restaurant promoting women's sports? More often than not, it's men's basketball, baseball, hockey, football, and golf that dominates the major networks. Well, a bar in Portland, Oregon, dedicated solely to women's sports is celebrating its first anniversary. The Sports Bra is considered the first of its kind in the nation, if not the world. Year-round founder and owner Jenny Nguyen does her part to rep female athletes on the bar's TVs, in its decor, in its memorabilia, and its merchandise. Nguyen, who is also a chef, even takes it a step further by featuring a house menu with women-owned and operated suppliers. A little after their anniversary, and after the March Madness rush, I spoke with Nguyen to look back on the bar's first year and ask her why she felt called to challenge the status quo of sports viewing.
I grew up playing basketball. It was my first love. I probably picked up a basketball when I was about 5, and I really never put it down. I had a really bad ACL rupture when I was 19, about 2 weeks before my very first college game, and that was devastating. And I went through kind of a deep depression, and during that depression, I was also away to college for the first time, and that's when I started to cook for myself. I was pre-med when I got to college because I didn't know what else to do. I honestly had thought I was going to play basketball in the WNBA, but I was a little delusional about it. I hadn't thought about life after basketball, basically. I got to college and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And my parents, of course, wanted me to be a doctor. I'm first generation Vietnamese American. And so, of course, they're going to want their daughter to be a doctor. So I signed up pre-med, and then I fell in love with cooking. So by the end of my sophomore year, I made the dreaded phone call to my parents to tell them that I wanted to be a chef. That did not go over well. But yeah, so I finished college, and then I enrolled in culinary school and started cooking. And I cooked for about 15 years and then was unemployed for about 5 years before deciding to open the Sports Bra. And I would not recommend going from unemployed to being a full-fledged like restaurant owner, like overnight. But other than that, yeah, that's kind of the trajectory of my history.
You opened the Sports Bra a little over a year ago. Coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, how did you know this was the right move for you?
Yeah, so when it got to the point where I had to decide what I wanted to do, it was very much an idea of like, my life is going to change entirely. Am I ready for that? And there was a moment that really tipped the scales for me, because I was pretty iffy. I was sitting around talking to my girlfriend at the time, and we had met playing basketball 14 years ago. And we were sitting around talking about how if we were little and our parents took us to a place like the sports bra, how much of an impact that would have had on our lives. And I just thought about young Jenny, like the little Jenny, like 7 years old. There's never been a place where I walked in, I felt like it was made for me. And so when I thought about a 7-year-old Jenny sitting down in a restaurant where I can look on the TV and look on the walls and be surrounded by images of women playing the sport that I loved and feeling like I belonged, that was what pushed me over the top. I was like, I have to do this. I got to give it a shot. And if it fails, it fails. But I'm going to give it everything that I have. So many of us, particularly women, we aren't willing to do whatever it takes for us, but we're willing to do whatever it takes for someone else. And so that's kind of the moment that I had. It was for little Jenny. And now we get lots of kids in here.
So building and opening a bar is one thing. How did you start thinking about combating and working to shift the cultural landscape of sports viewing?
You know, a lot of people think sports bar, and they don't really even, it's not even in their conscious mind that those are spaces that were created for men, and that they typically 98% of the time show men's sports, and that women often don't feel comfortable or seen there, let alone all the marginalized groups, right? So felt a lot of work at the beginning. It was like pulling teeth trying to find the content. And before I even started to sit down and write the business plan, I thought, okay, the core of a sports bar is showing stuff on TV. Like if we don't have that, we don't have ourselves a sports bar. And so oftentimes after the sports bar opened, people were like, duh, we should have had this 20 years ago. And it's like, conceptually, yes. But even 5 years ago, we didn't have the content we do now. And so that's why the sports bra is able to be successful now, is because there is more and more being added. It's this gigantic ocean of opportunity for women's sport. The fight towards equity, you know, is this huge, vast ocean. And I feel like the sports bra has like thrown a pebble in. And when that pebble hits the water, there's a ripple effect. You know, after the word kind of got out about how difficult or what a struggle it was for us to find content, and kind of the bra made a name for itself out there, we had network streaming services, leagues, teams reaching out to us being like, please show our stuff on TV. What you're doing draws more attention for us, will bring us more value. So they would give us subscriptions. They would give us things for free because they could see the value in having it here. And then their only thing was like, post a picture on your social media of people watching whatever stream or watching whatever game, and then share it.
Which sports are bringing out the biggest viewing crowds, and are there any lesser known sports that you're looking to help shine a bigger spotlight on?
So basketball, soccer are big. Tennis is huge. What's rad and up and coming that I think has great coverage and has kind of set the bar for equity is surfing. I don't know if you're familiar with the WSL. For years, they've had equal purses for men's and women's surfing. Softball is huge. Volleyball is huge. Last year we had the College World Series, and it was the Texas Longhorns were in it, and the entire bar was orange. And I was just like, Texas just showed up at the bra, like hardcore. They were doing cheers. They knew all the songs. We try to show like cheer and dance competitions when we have them. Yeah, so there's just so many. It's a wide range of things.
In your opinion, how does viewing women's sports exclusively change the energy inside the bar amongst customers compared to a more typical sports bar?
What I would consider like toxic masculinity, those kinds of traits that rear its head when you have extremely like aggressive competitive competition in a small space like that. We don't get that. We had a Sweet 16 party here, and we hosted some WNBA All-Stars. They had a tent outside that had a flat screen and like a VIP lounge. It was like a gigantic production. They were showing this towards the last couple minutes of this college Sweet 16 game. I can't remember who was playing, but the game was just a couple points off, and it was like getting down to the wire, and this woman got fouled. She goes to the free throw line. She's of course nervous. I would hate to be that person. And she shoots her very first free throw, and it's an air ball. And half of the tent is just like, oh, she airballed, you know, like, and just talking trash and just like making fun of her. And then she misses the second free throw, and then the team calls a timeout. And in the timeout, she sits on the bench and she just starts crying. And it goes to a commercial, and everybody's like, oh, she's crying, la, 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 and just like, you know, talking trash. And it comes back from a commercial. The woman who missed the free throws subs in and comes back into the game. And we had all assumed that she was just going to sit the rest of it out, like be done with it. She subs into the game, and literally everybody in the entire tent was cheering for her and was just like, get back in there, you got this. And just like, to me, that's the camaraderie that is underlying women's sports all the time. And I see it everywhere. Yeah, those are the moments that kind of define the sports bra to me as far as celebration.
Any advice for bar owners, managers, bartenders, or customers even that are looking to help shift the culture at their own local watering hole?
Yeah, 100%. I get people asking me all the time, from servers, supervisors, managers, to bar owners, about how to do that. And it's just as easy as changing the channel. And then also creating that space for people to feel safe. I mean, there's a behavior that has been tolerated for so long in these male-dominated spaces. And the sooner we can nip that in the bud, I mean, one, it's the right thing to do. And two, it's good for business. You create those safe spaces, you're welcoming people who are different from you, people who haven't ever felt comfortable. Like, I never went to a sports bar by myself, not once. And it was because I didn't feel safe doing so. But imagine if, folks like me did feel safe going to a local watering hole to watch a game, and to know that at least one of these TVs is going to be tuned into a women's sports network or a sports game or channel. I mean, if every sports bar in America changed one TV to a women's sports game every day, that would be a win for me. That would be a win for everybody, I think. But changing the channel is just the beginning. Changing the culture, the toxic masculinity in some of these spaces, and creating a safe environment for everybody is really, really the key behind all of it.
That was Jenny Nguyen, owner and founder of the Sports Bra in Portland, Oregon, speaking with our associate producer, Jody Cowan. You can learn more about the Sports Bra at thesportsbrapdx.com. Well, back on the East Coast, fans of thoroughbred racing recently gathered for the final and oldest leg of the Triple Crown, the Belmont Stakes on Long Island.
Yes! Yes! Go by him now! Come on, Hardy! Come on, buddy! Come on, buddy, run!
That's Jenna Antonucci, a fan, yes, but she's also a longtime horse trainer and owner. In 155 runnings of the Belmont Stakes, no female trainer has stood in the winner's circle until this year. What you're hearing is Antonucci's reaction from the stands as her trainee, Arcangelo, blew past the competition in the final stretch and won the 1.5-mile race in just over 2 minutes and 29 seconds.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
That sound courtesy of America's Best Racing. Congrats to Jenna and her team, and of course, Arcangelo. That's a wrap on this week's 51%. 51% is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in Albany, New York. It's produced and hosted by me, Jesse King. Our associate producer is Jody Cowan, and our theme is Lolita by the Albany-based artist Girl Blue. Just a reminder that you can listen to 51% anytime at WAMCpodcasts.org or wherever you get your podcasts. On social media, we're at WAMC Radio, and you can stay in the loop by signing up for our weekly newsletter, Airwaves, at WAMC.org. We hope you'll join us next week. Until then, I'm Jesse King for 51%.
I was every single girl, I was nobody else, I was so sure of myself. I was 15 and a half, he was a hollow laugh. And I lost my cool somewhere along the way. The nightmare down the hall